How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you in, Panther Nation, for the Pitt Panthers season preview show as we get ready for season 3 of our NCAA football dynasty here. Your Pitt Panthers had a lot of turnover in the offseason that we've touched upon in previous episodes of the Pitt Panthers show here. We know, of course, we lost a number of players to the draft: Jordan Whitehead, Brian O'Neill, Quadri Henderson. A couple players either transferred or were dismissed. We had one player leave for personal reasons, and because of that, the Panthers are having a ton of roster turnover. That meant they had a very big recruiting class that ended up being extremely solid. 10th ranked in the country, 2 5-star prospects on the offensive side of the ball in CJ London and Paul Lease, a bunch of 4 stars, a whole boatload of 3 stars, a lot of guys that are going to play a role this season. Antonio Greer, Jay Ballmer at tight end, and we're going to talk about here. So the thing we're going to lead off with is the player progression. Now, of course, you know, in NCAA football, everyone across the nation progresses, randomly anywhere from about 4 to 7 overall points in the offseason, and it goes like clockwork. And so it means if somebody's a starter year 1 for your team, if they're still on the team, they're probably going to stay a starter because everyone on the team progresses at a fairly similar rate. So in an effort to kind of introduce some randomness like you see in the NCAA, teams are changing year in and year out. Players kind of progress, some players regress, get worse, and things like that. We're trying to simulate that here. So what we've got for the Panthers is we can see that we've had a few different players hit hard by the bug. So I take 8 players and they go ahead and get struck with the negative bug, meaning I used a random number generator, generated 8 players on our roster, and then I randomly generated between 1 and 10, and that was the number of overall points that player had to lose. Then in an effort to pick a couple of guys that really overachieved at spring camp and summer camp, I picked 2 random numbers on our team and give them the ability to gain between 1 and 10 overall points with a random number generator. And so you can see the players that were hit this year. And last year, if you remember, we didn't have a lot of big numbers of regression. Most of the guys only lost between 1, maybe 2 or 3 overall points. This year, the big numbers really came out in full force. You can see George Aston, our starting fullback, lost 5 overall points. He still sits at 90 overall, which is fine. Aaron Matthews lost 7 overall points, went from a 92 as a junior to just an 85. Ben DiNucci, quarterback, went from 87 down to an 80, and that's a huge turn of events in our quarterback race. Brandon Ford down to 76, Taran Coleman down to 71, Jacob Lachlan down to 76, Robert Brown and Osi Obasohan down to 53 and 51, unfortunately. Rafael Araujo-Lopes, huge grower in the offseason, up to 79, and Michael Collins grows by 3 up to 75. And those are huge for their prospective opportunities for playing time moving forward. And that means that we take a look at the Pitt Panthers 2-deep chart for 2018 as it stands going into week 1 and game 1. Kenny Pickett, the big storyline, is your starting quarterback. The sophomore who had an unbelievable Music City Bowl, comes in 82 overall, very talented, a lot of tools, but we'll see if he can put them all together behind a relatively green and new offensive line. You've got a lot of older players on the line, but the experience on the left side of the line especially is lacking. Tony Pilato slots over to tackle to assume the left tackle role. Redshirt junior. Cameron Porter, as a sophomore, true sophomore, will be starting at left guard. Connor Dentino at center as a redshirt senior. Alex Buchser and Jared Jones-Smith, holdovers from last year. They are easily the best linemen for the Panthers at 94 and 90 overall, respectively. But that left side of the line is the big question mark. Only 81 overall in each position there, so remains to be seen what the Panthers can do. They do have a lot of depth. True freshman John Cooper could possibly see playing time if the line struggles because Dentino could move to a tackle or a guard position. In the skill positions, Quadri Olison does win the starting job out of camp. He had a very strong camp, very good player, but Darren Hall will definitely play a big role as well. The tandem senior lineup that the Panthers have in their backfield, as well as with redshirt senior fullback George Aston, that's 390 overall players in the Panthers backfield that are going to be fantastic. Aston, unbelievable blocker, Swiss utility knife, Swiss Army knife, hoping for more than the 1 touchdown he had last year. Darren Hall and Olison. Olison had 1,000 yards last year. Hall had 700. They're hoping to replicate more of the same, if not even more yards, to take the pressure off of Kenny Pickett. And finally, at receiver, you've got Aaron Matthews, 23 catches last year. Maurice French, 18 catches last year. Those are the Panthers' leading 2 receivers. They've got a lot of talent, a lot of speed in their receiving corps. Trey Tipton was very solid a year ago, or 2 years ago, didn't do as much last year. Rafael Araujo Lopes had an unbelievable camp, went up 9 overall points. He had 11 catches last year. You expect to see more out of him. Paul Lees had a good camp as well. And then tight end-wise, couple of true freshmen, Antonio Greer and Jay Ballmer will have to step in for Chris Clark, the Panthers' second leading receiver, who is now gone from the team. So the Panthers, hopefully on offense, will find some kind of ability in the passing game to provide that depth for their offense. Defensively, some big moves here. Sean Wolfgang has won the left end position out of camp. James Folston started every game last year at right end, never recorded a sack, and because of that, Dwayne Hendricks has taken over the right end position. Sean Wolfgang has won the left end job. He's going to have Ronnie Baker, the true freshman, and Patrick Jones behind him, possibly providing some depth there. Dwayne Hendricks hoping to repeat his 14-sack season from last year. Keyshawn Camp, fantastic year last year, 5 sacks. Amir Watts as well in the lineup there. Both of those guys look very solid. And they have Darren Toth for depth, the true sophomore. Not much behind him, so hopefully they can stay healthy on the defensive line. Linebacker is arguably one of the Panthers' most deep positions that they have over the entire lineup. Elijah Zeiss, fantastic player. 87 overall. Salim Brightwell, 88 overall. Sean Idowu, 88 overall. Actually, I have those flip-flops. Zeiss should be 88, and Idowu should be 87. A little typo there. But either way, very deep at linebacker. Some very solid players. A lot of experience there. And then Barry Jenkins, Jason Jordan played very well as true freshman last year. Chase Pine looking to finally get his opportunity. So some solid players in the middle of the field, and who should hopefully lead the team in tackles and be all over the place. The Panthers don't want to see their leading tacklers coming from the secondary like they have the last couple of years, because that typically means that pass catchers and things like that are getting into the second level and are getting onto the ball a lot, and that's where the Panthers need to improve. Damar Hamlin's going to assume the top corner role. He's been playing in the slot the last 2 years. Dane Jackson will continue to play there. Phillip E. Motley had a fantastic camp. He is going to take that nickel corner role. Kaiser Scott will retain his kind of dime and quarter corner role that he excelled in last year for the Panthers. Paris Ford hopes to continue to improve. The true sophomore is leading at free safety. Dennis Briggs, the redshirt sophomore, finally assumes a starting role with Jordan Whitehead going to the NFL draft. We'll see what the senior Captain Briggs can do there. He's backed up by a redshirt freshman, Jacob Laughlin. Jazzy Stalker, kind of a utility guy that can be used at either safety position throughout the season. So the Panthers defense steadily improving. There's no superstars on that defense there, but there's a lot of very solid contributors that can play a role. Now, where they need to see a superstar emerge is in the return game. Quadri Henderson, we know, was electrifying. Maurice French is assuming the kick return role. Kaiser Scott assuming the punt return role. Paris Ford was an unbelievable returner in high school. He's a guy that's just electrifying with the ball in his hands. He's kind of the secondary option if neither of those guys can get off the ball. Jay Bump looking to improve on a very strong freshman season, and Eric Fox, the new freshman punter for the Panthers. So if we look at the Panthers overall, nationally they're ranked 32nd by Athlon Sports. ACC prediction has them at number 7 for the entirety of the conference, 4th in the Coastal Division. And if we look at the Panthers, their keys to success: number 1, quarterback controversy. Kenny Pickett is the man on everyone's mind. Will he be able to replicate his Music City Bowl magic? He's got the arm and the composure, but how is he going to fare against a very tough schedule with 3 new starters on the offensive line? Attack aerially. Jordan Whitehead and Avonte Max being lost in the secondary. Will the new starters, Briggs, Damar Hamlin, guys who are going to get Motley, who are going to have more playing time, can they step up and improve upon an NCAA worst pass defense? And specialist success. Maurice French and Kaiser Scott have to fill the shoes of Quadri Henderson, one NCAA top returner the last 2 years, and Eric Fox has to come in for Ryan Winslow at punter. Winslow was fantastic as well for the Panthers. The scheduling is going to be very tough. The Panthers have 3 top 10 opponents. They've got arguably the toughest non-conference schedule in the NCAA. They got Penn State, UMass, UCF, and Notre Dame in non-conference games. Not to mention they play Louisville in a cross-division game, who has Lamar Jackson still. So a very tough schedule for the Panthers. Time's going to tell if they're going to be able to withstand that pressure every week. The players that are projected to break out for the team this year, number 1, goes without saying, sophomore quarterback Kenny Pickett. The Panthers will go as Kenny Pickett goes. The sophomore was electric in relief duty against Texas A&M, but how's he going to hold up? He's got that new offensive line in front of him. His receivers are untested. Can he put them to use, put the ball in their hands, let them make plays, and lead the Panthers to success? Also, Maurice French, he's going to feature in that Quadri Henderson role. He's going to return kicks. He should get some sweeps and some runs, receiving the ball as well. He's going to see a lot of the ball and hopefully make some plays with it. And on defense, Philippi Motley, the redshirt junior corner, had a great camp. He's going to slot into the nickel corner role and should see a lot of the field for a solid Pitt defense. But the big thing to take a look at is their schedule. There are no cakewalks on this schedule, with the exception of week 1 against UMass, who the Panthers should hopefully walk through comfortably. Every single week is going to be a test for your Pitt Panthers. They come home after playing UMass and take on number 10 Penn State, who is fantastic and of course has Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley at their disposal. Then they take on a UCF team that was 2-10 last year, but they are very talented. So you expect a big bounce back year from UCF. They're going to be motivated this year, and so you would expect a tough game for the Panthers, especially being away from home. Then they come home and take on Louisville. Lamar Jackson is going to try and run rampant on Heinz Field. A very good Boston College underrated team will be the next matchup. Then the Panthers just kind of alternate tough teams. Virginia Tech at home. Virginia Tech's been a nemesis of them the last couple years. That'll be tough. At Virginia should be one that's probably the easiest remaining game on the schedule. Then they have to go to South Bend and take on Notre Dame. They got Deshaun Kaiser. They have an unbelievable squad. They are number 4 in the country and are going to be incredibly tough, especially in front of their home crowd. Then the Panthers will come back home, take on Georgia Tech, who's got Lane Kiffin now, so you expect to see maybe a little bit of dishevelment on the part of Georgia Tech picking up a new offense, but it'll be later in the season, so they should be a tough out. At Duke, a team that the Panthers have fared fairly easily against the last 2 years, but they have a lot of talent, and they'll be at home, so maybe a late season game that could be a trap for the Panthers. They come home, take on North Carolina, a team that they've had a lot of trouble with. Of course, North Carolina beat them last year in Chapel Hill, so the Panthers will want to return the favor here at home on senior night. And then the Panthers will have to travel to Miami in a very hostile environment. If the season turns out the way that they would like, then it could be a game for the ACC division crown. But Miami's number 5 in the country. It's going to be a very tough game. So right now, your Panthers projected at 7-5, 5-3 in the ACC, and 4th in the ACC Coastal Division in what looks to be, a retooling season for the Panthers. But if things go right, it could be very promising. We look around the ACC, Clemson is the team to beat here, no doubt about that. Clemson is the team to beat. They've lost Deshaun Watson, their Heisman winner from last season, but they still have the most talent in the conference, and they look primed for a chance to defend their crown. They are currently 2-time defending national champions, 4-time defending ACC champions, and we project they're going to do it yet again, at least as far as the ACC is concerned. Best player in the conference, Lamar Jackson, the Louisville senior quarterback, no doubt about that. He was 3rd in Heisman voting last year, counted for 39 touchdowns. He is electrifying, and he is looking to help topple Clemson from their ACC Atlantic perch on a strong Louisville team, but that is a very top-heavy ACC Atlantic division. Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, all with a say, potentially at a division title. If one or two teams slips up, the other ones can take advantage. The dark horse, especially in that division, though, is Wake Forest. They were winless in the ACC last year and 2-10 overall, but they are a team to watch. They have an incredible amount of talent at skill positions. They have 2 87-rated quarterbacks, 4 90-plus rated tailbacks, and 2 91-plus rated receivers. An unbelievable amount of talent. They have a good offensive line as well. The question is, can they get the ball in all their playmakers' hands to make a difference? And the biggest question mark, it's for Clemson actually, is their quarterback position. Kelly Bryant, the redshirt junior, is slated to take the reins from Deshaun Watson, but Bryant has thrown less than 40 passes in his career for the Tigers. So the question is, how he can do will determine how high Clemson's quest for a three-peat can fly. Kelly Bryant is really going to have to, at least manage the game well. They have so much talent that he doesn't need to be Deshaun Watson, but he can't be incredibly bad either. So the Tigers are looking to repeat. Lamar Jackson, ACC Player of the Year, you'd expect. Miami, the Coastal favorite as it currently stands. They look kind of head and shoulders above everybody else in the Coastal Division right now, and they're hoping to earn an ACC title rematch against Clemson. They'll actually play each other in Clemson's second game of the season. In the Coastal, though, the thing is Miami, Virginia Tech, Pitt, and Virginia all breaking in new starting quarterbacks, so it remains to be seen how those teams will fare with that in mind. And then, of course, Wake Forest is really the team to watch. They struggled so much last year. They come in ranked 103rd in the country, picked last in the ACC Atlantic. But talent-wise, they could arguably be 3rd or 4th. So right now, Clemson predicted to win the Atlantic. Miami predicted to win the Coastal. Your Pitt Panthers projected to come in 4th. They're ranked 32nd in the NCAA right now. But you can see it's kind of a toss-up. North Carolina, Pitt, Georgia Tech, all with very similar levels of talent. And they're right on the heels of Virginia Tech. So Miami slips up once or twice this year, and any one of those teams could be in for the running for the ACC title. With that said, the NCAA as a whole, Clemson is arguably the favorite yet again, but Texas, are they back? They're the team that comes in ranked number 1 in the country. They have Chris Warren, the third halfback that could potentially, win the Heisman. He's in there in the Heisman watch with Saquon Barkley, the senior halfback of Penn State. Lamar Jackson, of course, of Louisville. Warren is a guy to watch as well. Texas, of course, has an unbelievable linebacker core as well. So they're a team that could make a run this year. Some underrated teams are Stanford and Oklahoma, both 99 overall, but they're ranked 22nd and 28th respectively. While you can see there's some group of 5 teams that are very solid overall and might try and pull an Arkansas State and break into the BCS. That includes Arkansas State themselves, Middle Tennessee State, and South Florida. So a lot of teams looking to have a say. ACC favorites are currently Clemson, Texas the favorites in the Big 12. Ohio State and Penn State, it's kind of a toss-up there. Ohio State is the favorite right now, but that could go either way depending on what happens when the teams face each other later this season. Are the Big 10 favorites? Washington projected to win the Pac-12, though UCLA and Stanford both look very strong and could have a say about that. And 399 rated teams in the SEC all projected to have a chance at the title. Alabama is, of course, the favorite, as they usually are, but LSU and Tennessee both have a chance to try and improve themselves and get into that SEC title. So what's going to happen, though, things may be spelled out very early as far as who is a contender and who is a pretender, because there are a ton of non-conference games early on that pit top-ranked schools. Week 1 could spell the end for some schools' national championship hopes, as number 4 Notre Dame hosts number 1 Texas. What a marquee matchup in Week 1. And 299 overall teams going to face off in Week 1. Those teams might lose their national championship hopes right off the bat. Clemson hosts number 14 Texas A&M in Week 1 as well, and then their next game is against number 5 Miami, a rematch of the ACC championship game. So those are just massive tests for both of those schools. You have Ohio State heading to number 12 Virginia Tech in Week 3. Alabama has no cakewalk. They open up with Wisconsin, who's 91 overall themselves and a potential favorite for the Big Ten title. That's who Alabama has to open up with. Notre Dame has one of the most ridiculous schedules we can even talk about. They have to play number 6 Florida State, who's 99 overall, number 16 Louisville, who's 93 overall. They take on USC, who's number 25, and then both Notre Dame and number 10 Penn State have to take on your Pitt Panthers, incredibly upset-minded, and they're 90 overall themselves with a lot of young talent on the roster. So whoever gets on a non-conference play is no doubt going to be battle tested. There are a couple teams that don't have particularly tough non-conference schedules. That would include the likes of Washington, and LSU's isn't particularly tough. So a couple of teams that'll get through non-conference, but of course the conference schedule could bring them back down to earth as well. Stars under center. There's going to be a lot of star power this season. 599 rated quarterbacks: Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, Trace McSorley of Penn State, Deshaun Kaiser at Notre Dame, and Brent Stockstill of MTSU, Middle Tennessee State, a BCS buster potentially. You got Jake Browning, 98 overall from Washington, Will Grier from West Virginia. All fantastic quarterbacks that could have a say in the Heisman race. And the big story, of course, we've touched on it already, is Clemson. They are trying to stay on top of the NCAA mountain for the 3rd consecutive year, which would just be incredible. They have the most intimidating defensive line football. All 4 of their starters, 92 or more rated overall. Their defense should be unbelievable. And their offensive talent, it just doesn't quit. CJ Fuller will take over at halfback. Deion Kane and Hunter Renfrow are fantastic wide receivers. And Kelly Bryant has a lot of talent. All he has to do is put on a particularly good Deshaun Watson impression, and Clemson's going to be right back in the national championship mix again. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this preview episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know, what do you project the Panthers are going to do this year? How will the Panthers finish? We have them at 7-5 is kind of the expected, but best case, you could expect maybe 9-3, 10-2 if things go the right way for the Panthers this season. Who's going to win the national title? Who do you think might win the Heisman this year? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. And of course, anytime you comment, we will potentially talk about that in our next review show if you ask a question or anything like that. So thank you so much for tuning in, Panther Nation. As always, hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.